We continue to get reaction on President Cyril Ramaphosa's latest announcement. The president has since placed Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on leave of absence. He has also appointed lawyer and politician Professor Firoz Cachalia to act as police minister with effect from the 1st of next month. To discuss these developments further, we're now joined by political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Ngoasheng. So reaction continues to pour in following the president's address. Something he concluded in just under 20 minutes or so. So he's placed Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on a leave of absence and announced a new commission of inquiry. Now, while some are terming this limited action to a rather complex problem, I guess the question is this the leadership South Africans were expecting, or did Ramaphosa once again default to his trademark caution over solid action stance?
Yeah, I think Ramaphosa definitely delayed the tough action that he should have taken. He should have, at the very least, charted out a path for if he's going to be on leave, the police minister, how long is he going to be on leave for, and what is the plan to ensure that there is a speedy access to justice, because these are very serious allegations. And while putting together a commission is a good thing and is important in that it'll get us to the truth, we cannot wait until the end of the commission before the minister is fired if indeed he is guilty. And I think that one of the biggest issues in South Africa is that we've had so many of these police related commissions, and the recommendations from these commissions have not been taken up or acted upon by government. You know that we've had commissions as far as the TRC. We had, after the TRC, the harms, the commission that effectively looked into policing in Khayelitsha. We've had a commission that looked into state apparatus security and how state security in 2018 was misused, the Mkhwanazi commission. And then you had the Marikana commission, which also looked at some of the issues that had to do with state policing and the systemic failures within the structures of the policing system. And these are all the issues that are now coming back to haunt us, the issues already spoken about the police and the security cluster as a whole. And again, we saw in July of 2021 how political leaders could use South Africans in order to destabilize the country. And so when the security cluster is not at its best and is not, working effectively as it should, it does put the country's security under peril, and it does lead to South Africans feeling unsafe and actively being under siege.
And I want us to also maybe delve into his interim resolve to all of this. At face value, this looks like somewhat of a soft landing for what other analysts have termed a slap on the wrist for political allies. The president, did not suspend Mchunu or remove him from cabinet. He instead placed him on what he called a leave of absence. Does this somewhat give a reading of the grip and control that the president has on the situation and his perceived need to preserve what many have termed political ties?
Well, I think it is a difficult position to be in for the president, because you'll remember that Senzo Mchunu is one of the few KZN leaders who supported him during his competition or his attempt to become the president. And so there is some loyalties there, and he would be wanting to reward that loyalty despite everything that's going on. You must also remember that President Cyril Ramaphosa is in his second term and effectively has nothing to lose at this point, in the sense that, until the elective conference of 2027, he has nothing to compete for. But he does obviously need to preserve his slate, meaning that the people that supported him and those that he would be effectively wanting to cap for the new leadership of the ANC after 2027 would have to be in line. Now, you would think that at the very least, he should have made sure that it's a proper suspension and not leave, because, what it means effectively is that Senzo Mchunu will continue to receive his salary and will continue to receive his benefits and be in a position to, if it is indeed true that he's trying to vie for the ANC presidency, he will be in a position to focus on that while funded by South African taxes money. And that is where, people are being upset about, or people are being infuriated, because we are in a situation where somebody is facing huge allegations of corruption and they're able to continue their lives as if nothing happened without disruption. And in fact, it was Senzo Mchunu itself who suggested the leave of absence and not the president actually acting. And we all thought that, when the minister was pulled from the trip, the other minister of higher education was pulled from the trip to China, that we were potentially looking at a ministerial or cabinet reshuffle. But that didn't happen at all.
And here's the thing, many South Africans continue to also echo those sentiments, Ms. Ngoasheng, and the sense across the board is a sense of frustration where some South Africans are even coming out to say that there's seemingly a trend where bad behavior is seemingly rewarded. Case in point would be the one minister that was also moved from the Ministry of Justice to another portfolio. Seemingly, that's the trend.
Yeah, this is unfortunately what the DA has also been complaining about, that, their minister went overseas without seeking permission and was removed as deputy minister as a result of these actions. And that was, when you look at the level or seriousness of the offense, that is a far lighter offense than being accused of effectively undermining the very actions and the very work of the ministry that you're in charge of, which is what Senzo Mchunu is being accused of. And also, it's a much lighter offense than, the kind of corruption leveled at the former justice minister who was simply moved, and the kind of breach of ethics that is being leveled at the Minister of Higher Education. But because they are ANC ministers, they are getting off lightly and they are not being held accountable in the ways that others seemingly are being held accountable. And that's a big problem.
And I want us, now to pinpoint this because Commissioner Mkhwanazi's allegations went just beyond the Minister of Police himself. There were references to senior crime intelligence officials and other elements as well in the security cluster. Why do you think the president sort of stopped short of taking immediate action across the board as was expected of him?
Well, I think he is in a very tough position because the allegations, as you said, are not only about the police, but the entire state apparatus. You'll remember that during Jacob Zuma's tenure, we had the very curious case of a minister's wife being arrested together with a foreign national accused of trafficking young girls, and forcing them to be drug mules to various South American countries. And that case kind of sort of disappeared until the so-called foreign accused recently came out trying to appeal his case, and those are the issues that we are still dealing with from the previous administration of the ANC when Jacob Zuma was at the helm. We know from the commission around the state agency that there was a lot of corruption happening there. People were using houses meant for witness protection as their houses and sometimes even as party houses. People were using vehicle meant for the witness protection and for crime prevention, and also using asset forfeiture funds which are meant to be used for investigations as effectively their party and slush funds. And so those are issues that still have not been dealt with about the corruption at the security apparatus level of South Africa, because it's not just the police that secures South Africa. It's the police, it's the defense ministry, and it's also the state agency. And when there is corruption and weaknesses that have been shown in those three security apparatus institutions, it really means that South Africa is vulnerable to all kinds of criminal and military interventions. And we're not only right now dealing with the police minister's accusations. Remember that there are also serious accusations against senior members of the Defense Force itself, starting all the way with Nosiviwe, who used to be the Minister of Defense. And so there is a lot that's going on that makes South Africans very uncomfortable about the state of the security of the country and about the country's ability to deal with crime, which is a huge problem that the president himself stated when he went on that state visit to the United States to try and get the U.S. to not have sanctions against us. They mentioned crime and they mentioned its seriousness, and to turn around and act in such a dissatisfactory manner when police corruption is being exposed in this way, it leaves a lot to be desired.
And just a quick one before I let you go. I want us to touch base on the incoming acting police minister, Firoz Cachalia. This is a man who has received glowing recommendations across the board. And by that I mean most of the reactions from the political parties have welcomed his appointment. I mean, he's a South African lawyer, politician, and previously served in the Gauteng legislature as well. He will be serving as acting police minister, albeit for a short period. Now, he clearly has his work cut out for him. And I say this because it won't just take a few months to deal with the alleged issues General Mkhwanazi spoke about in his explosive briefing last week, and say that 3 or 6 months comes by and goes. Do we have a democracy that is able to withstand, say, the rot without serious reform?
I think that, these are systemic issues. I mentioned the various commissions that have been had all the way from the TRC and then the Marikana and then the Kailicha Commission and the State Apparatus Mafumadi Commission. These are all commissions which showcase that there is widespread corruption and widespread weak infrastructure, weak systems of accountability and governance, and even the Zondo Commission itself very clearly outlining that one of the biggest issues that made it very easy for people to be corrupt and get away with is because there was no accountability. So there is, a lot of work that this new minister is going to have to do. And this work is not a simple month or 6 month job. It is systemic. And the problem is, we know, Cyril Ramaphosa himself said the ANC is #1 accused at the Zondo Commission. And in saying that, he affirmed what many had been saying, that the ANC is at the center of the criminality, and the ANC is a big center of the rot. And if they don't clean themselves out, unfortunately at this point, I don't know how they're going to clean themselves out, because the numbers tell a story that out of the 87 NEC members of the ANC, at least 41 of them have faced or are facing formal charges from Zondo Commission and various other commissions and, state apparatus formal grievance procedures. And so if you look at 87, people, of which 41, that is almost the majority, facing corruption charges, how are you going to clean up? Are you going to, cut your entire NEC and start from scratch? And even if you go to the next layer of the ANC, how many of those comrades are clean? And this is the problem, since 1994, the ANC has been on a systemic corrupt corrupt ruling, if you can put it like that. And because of that, it's difficult for them to find leaders who are clean and leaders who can be brought in these very dangerous times for our democracy, because democracy, requires people to accede power to the state. And if people don't have confidence in the state, they are going to take the law into their own hands. We're likely to see more vigilante action as people believe that the police are not empowered to do their work and that the police are simply going to be paid off by criminals. And this is a dangerous state of being, because then South Africa becomes, a place where, it's any man's law.
All right, Asanda Ngoasheng is a political analyst. I must thank you so much for your time on the program, as well as your razor-sharp insights. Thanks very much indeed.